And then there's the second part. Aren't you ashamed that you hand over your mind to anyone around for it to be upset and confused if the person insults you? So how can an insult do that? How can an insult allow you to be upset and confused and, in a certain sense, used? Yeah, so there's actually an important point there. So you see that kind of thing happen. I see teachers who've been doing it for a while and they're burned out. And it's, I always try to keep this in mind. Most people who start off teaching, they start off with probably pretty good intentions. Interestingly enough, some of the best teachers I know started off with the worst intentions. I don't mean like in terms of like being terrible people, but like, for example, there was a teacher who retired recently. She was my master teacher. She taught for 35 years. And I asked her, why did you start teaching? And she said, because it seemed like it was a lot of money and we had summers off. I'm like, oh, okay. And this is a teacher who, among her students, was universally loved. Everyone loved Mrs. Hall. And then I talked to other teachers. There's the teacher I'm thinking of right now who's here. Please don't start shouting out names. But this is a teacher who's, when I talk to them, they're constantly frazzled. They're constantly like disheveled and just like, if I see them on like a Thursday or so like that, they're like, we're almost to Friday. And then when Friday comes around, you see them, they're like, oh, it's Friday. You know, and they seem to like live for those last 2 days of the 7 of their lives. And I think that, God, that's a terrible way to live. You know, to just be trying to go on autopilot through 5/7 of your life just to get to those last 2 days. And this is a person who probably dreads Sunday as well, because then you're thinking, oh, should I have to go back tomorrow and interact in a job I hate? But when I talk with this person, I've asked them before why they do it, and their whole thing is like, because I want to help people. I want to change kids' lives. And I've actually asked this person once before, like, how are you qualified to change people's lives? What about it is, like, why are you trying to change someone's life? Like, in other words, what is it about you? I wasn't trying to be insulting. Well, sorry, I wasn't trying to be, but you know, sometimes. And I was asking this question, how is it, in what way do you think that you're qualified to try to change someone's life? And to this person's credit, they stopped, they thought about it, and they go, I guess I'm not. Maybe that's why I'm always so frustrated. So, well, fair enough, fair enough. If you set out for something like that, well, yeah, I can see that's going to happen, because, I mean, like when I'm talking with you guys, I presume that there's now 41 of you in the class, 39 here today. I presume that at 41 of you, there's probably like 3 or 4 who are ever like listening and paying attention at any given time, like actually focused and hearing what's being said, because there's so many other things going on in life. You've got things at home, you've got social life, you have all of these things, and I'm up here trying to talk to you about Epictetus. Now, I could stand here and go, stop, pay attention, everybody listen, and how crazy would I be driven if I did this to myself? You know? Instead, it's more like, it's here, knowledge, information, if you want it, yeah, you'll get a grade for it, you'll get a credit for it, it'll go towards graduation, so in a self-serving way, it's available to you, and I think that these are some of the greatest ideas that have ever been presented by some of the smartest people to ever live. You can't go wrong with that, but it's your call. You know, it's up there, do it, not, whatever. In other words, going back to what I said at the beginning about what Stoicism is, can I control if you're paying attention? Can I control if you're listening? No. But there's a lot of you. There's a lot of you. You could probably overwhelm. I was thinking about that today. I was walking in the halls. I was talking to their teacher. I'm like, there's like 2,500 of them. There's only like 100 of us. Well, if they decided to take over the place, we'd be in deep trouble. And my friend was like, why do you think of stuff like that? Because you have to be ready. You always have to be ready. I'm glad I'm near a gate, just in case it goes down. But you have a choice of how you perceive it. You can perceive it from this perspective of, you know, this is terrible. Why aren't they listening? Why aren't people doing this? Or you can take it from the perspective of, I get to deal with some neat ideas. I get to talk with some people. I don't think anybody wakes up in the morning and decides I'm going to go in and be a jerk today. I mean, sure, there might be 1 or 2 people. But for the most part, people don't decide that. People just decide to live life, and sometimes it's, you know, it's one way where it's kind, and sometimes it's the opposite of that. You know, I don't think that people make up their minds to do good or evil. People just do good or evil without even thinking of necessarily about it. Most of us will stumble through life. In fact, you guys have 2 more years, and then once you're out of here, within a year or 2 of that, you'll probably completely forget that you ever even took this class, because your mind will be off into other things in life. And then maybe going through a yearbook someday, you may scroll back and go, I feel like I remember that, something about that. you know? And so I can pour so much of my physical energy and my sense of self, my sense of dignity into it, and for a pursuit that I know is going to be forgotten or not. And that doesn't mean like you approach it from like, who cares, doesn't matter, because it does matter. In fact, guys, like I was talking about, the words that you use, the way that you speak, the ideas that you have access to, all of these things are going to have a significant influence on the course and direction of your life. And I'm not saying you should go off and study philosophy. You shouldn't study philosophy. Don't study philosophy. If you guys go to college, those of you who want to go, don't study philosophy. It's a waste of time. Don't do it. It'll be bad for you. It'll mess you up. It'll drive you crazy. And in the end, who knows if it ever even gets you anywhere. But for now, it can give you some entertainment, maybe. It can teach you how to argue with people, maybe. There's some value that could be there, if you find value in it. Is there value there? Well, there's value in the monster in the closet, yes. If you find it, the value isn't necessarily on the page. By the way, I think the value is on the page. But even if you don't, you can understand that there's value on the page if you project it onto the page. There's something from here I can get, maybe. There's something that from a class that I can get, even something mundane and useless like math. You can get something from that, even. If you look at it and you project it onto there and go, there's something of value, that you convince yourself of that, and then you go and find the thing. Like the Black Widow spiders, if you remember this. Find the things that you're looking for. And so maybe if you're going about your life and you're looking for some kind of validation from other people, well then yeah, that's going to drive you crazy, because you're not going to get it a lot of times. It doesn't matter how good you are, it doesn't matter how smart you are, it doesn't matter any of that, because your reputation is just opinion. And you can't control the opinions of other people. You can absolutely influence the opinions of other people, and you can force people to do things physically. You can grab them and force them, you can push them into certain directions and make them do things. But you can't force them to believe it. But man, you can influence people into believing things. And that's where the real power is. I don't recall, was it in this class I was talking about lying and timelines? Was it this class? Someone could answer that.
I don't think so.
Does it sound familiar? Okay, so for example, what's wrong with lying? Nothing. It's totally cool. Why does a person lie? Think like most base reason a person lies. Yeah.
To avoid getting in trouble.
Okay. To avoid getting in trouble. So you've done something, and you've. Let's just remember this. So what's something a person would do that they would lie about so they wouldn't get in trouble for it?
Your grades?
What's that?
Your grades?
Okay, so maybe you're going to try to lie about your grades and hide your grades. So there's this real world that exists where you have D's and F's, let's say, and you're trying to hide that. But this is a real world. So you're going to lie to, I don't know, say you lie to your parents about your grades. What you're trying to do by lying to them, you're trying to create an alternate reality in which you don't have D's and F's, you have, let's say, B's and C's. Okay? And if you can convince them that this real world exists, you've now taken your parents out of reality, and you've now put them into a false reality, a fake reality, a virtual reality. And in other words, you separated them from the actual universe as it is, quite literally. And so now, as they move forward in life, they're going to make decisions based off of this piece of information that you caused them to believe. If instead you didn't do that, they would be making decisions off of this line of information that actually exists in the world. And once you recognize your ability to do this, you start to recognize the power of your language. So, for example, you get a little kid. I don't know. Any of you guys babysit little nieces, nephews, brothers, sisters, guys? Okay. Any of them little liars? Yeah. Good news. Good news. If they're liars and they're really young, that indicates high intelligence. The younger you are when you start lying, it indicates a higher level of intelligence. So if you get like a little 2-year-old who can barely talk and they're trying to lie to you with the very few words that they know they're lying to you, that's a good thing. Ish. Now, you don't want to let them lie, because it's the ability to do that that indicates high intelligence. It's not the act of doing it. In other words, what that means is that they recognize, wait a second, I know something that you don't know. That's a really, really sophisticated idea. If you think about it, there's no reason for us to realize that I know something that you don't know unless I can talk to you and find out. But they can't talk to you yet and find out. They can't quite understand language that way. But they do understand at a very early age that they know something you don't know. They know that they've eaten a cookie, and they know that if you ask them, have you eaten a cookie, and if they say no, they know that they believe anyway, they can hide this fact from you. They also know it might get them another cookie, an abstract thing. So we understand that by lying, I can change the course of your life, and I can get something extra for myself as well. That's a really sophisticated idea. Most kids don't really develop that until they get older. In fact, the way that most kids learn how to lie is we'll joke with them, and we'll be like, they'll be like you have a marker, and you'll be like, I don't have a marker. And they'll be like point behind you, or whatever sound little kids make. In other words, you're showing them the act of deception. If you don't do that and they figure it out themselves, that indicates they're highly intelligent. Because now they realize that they know stuff that you don't. Now, I also realize, by the way, that just with words, they can get you to do what they want you to do. A little, 2-year-old can't get up and force you, to get them a cookie, but they can lie to you. And then they realize, wow, I can just use language to do that. I can just use cuteness, or I can just use whatever it is. And so by doing that, they're creating a version of reality that's not the real reality itself. This is one of the reasons it's so terrible to lie, to cheat on people. Because when you're cheating on somebody, let's say you're with somebody, and then rather than B's and C's, instead now you're dating somebody else behind their back. So now what you're doing is you're creating an alternate reality that actually changes the course of this person's life. Because they're going to make decisions on their life based off of that relationship. So in other words, you lie to them, you're cheating on them, but you cause them to believe that they're the only ones. You guys are super, super close. You hang out all the time, you listen to the same music, you finish each other's sandwiches. You're just really tight. You're really tight-knit. And then all of a sudden, this person finds out that you're a cheater. Understand that this person believed that there was one thing in the world that they knew better than themselves, and that was you. And now all of a sudden you come along and said, remember that one thing that you were an expert in, that one thing that you knew everything about? Yeah, you didn't know about it. You were completely wrong about that. I mean, it's kind of silly, but I can't think of another example. But imagine if you woke up today and you found out that you've been lied to and that 2 + 2 doesn't equal 4. I don't know, something like that, something really significant in your life. And you might be like, oh, come on, that's not true. But then you have incontrovertible proof in front of you. And you'd be like, holy crap, what else am I wrong about? Because if I'm wrong about 2 + 2 + 4, I'm probably wrong about algebra. And you're probably wrong about all kinds of other things. The one thing that you thought you knew, you didn't know. And that, therefore, means you don't know anything. And it completely, when people talk about this is why I have trust issues, that's why. It isn't even so much that you can't trust somebody else. It's that you can't trust yourself. Because you put so much trust in this one person, you believed it so much, and your judgment was so impaired, oh my goodness, that can happen again. So why should I trust this other person? It isn't even so. That's projection, by the way. I can't trust you. No, you can't trust yourself. And this is why people will cut themselves off completely and say, I'm just never going to trust anyone again. Who are you really not trusting in that scenario? Yourself. And by the way, with good reason. Because then when this happens, a lot of times you'll look back at it and go, son of a bitch, I should have seen it. There were all of these signs. There were all kinds of things. I should have seen it coming. And then you're going to be angry with yourself. You're going to blame yourself. Oh, again, I'm so stupid. You weren't stupid. You were trusting. And it isn't. And maybe your judgment was impaired because you wanted so much to believe this other person. And now it becomes difficult to ever do that again, because then this thing snaps back into the real reality once you find out that that's happening. But again, it's even more nefarious than that, because all that time that you spent with this other person, that meant that who knows what your life would have been like if you had interacted with the world as it really was. Maybe the love of your life was in here somewhere. Maybe a better job opportunity was in here somewhere. Shit, maybe self-respect was in here somewhere. But you'll never know what was here, because that person took you on a ride on an alternate reality. And then, by the way, I brought us back to central reality here, but even then, you're not going to perceive reality as it really is. Because now you're going to be so untrusting of yourself and others that you're going to be unable to perceive the world as it really is. Because, as I've said, none of us perceives the world the way that it really is. We see the world the way that we really are. So I don't trust that person, so therefore, if I don't trust myself, therefore I can't possibly trust another person, so therefore there's no trust in the world. And because you don't trust them, now what do you know about relationships? The one thing you know about relationships is everybody cheats all the time. That's just the way relationships are. So that means I can't trust this other person, I can't trust myself. And now it becomes very difficult to have meaningful relationships. And that happened because this one person did this. It's not a small thing, it's not a trivial thing. It isn't just, oh, I get mad because this happened. You genuinely change the course of a person's life. They will never be the same after that. You know? It doesn't seem fair in certain ways. You know, you can treat a person badly and they're never the same. You can give someone a sandwich because they're hungry and they'll just be like, thanks, bro. And they'll completely forget you ever gave them the sandwich. You know, the kind things that we do tend to be forgotten. And then the horrible thing, well, even just the bad things that we do, those are the things that seem to stain people the most. And of course, this includes ourselves as well, of course. So, there's a choice, though. You can choose to perceive it this way. You can't control what's happened, but you can control how you respond to it. You can control how you think about it. You can control how you behave towards it. And that's what Stoicism would say. Because by allowing that cheater to do this to you, it caused you to never be able to trust yourself or another. Well, that's what's happening here. It's not necessarily an insult. I mean, it's an insult to you and an insult to your character. But moreover, that you've now allowed that person who's now long gone from your life to still control, to still drive you around, and control how you respond to people, to affect your relationships. That person maybe is out of your life for 10, 20, 30 years, who knows? But you're still allowing that one thing to control you. And that means that the effect is even more lasting than we normally would give them credit for. And so, if someone took your body and threw you in jail or put you in slavery, you'd be angry because they're limiting your emotion. But for some reason, we don't give it a second thought that we allow people to control our emotions for things that we've allowed, well, things that have happened to us, sometimes things we've allowed to happen, if we're being honest. But then certainly, of course, things that we allow, the ways that we allow ourselves to respond to it. Questions, comments, concerns, complaints? Chris? Yeah, I do.